Whoa! Welcome to the What's Already podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic Judge and Jerry. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-host, Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We are here, not live, but we're here, and we appreciate you tuning in. And go ahead and hit that follow, like, subscribe, bell notification, all those fun buttons that tell you exactly where to find us and when we're going to have new episodes and all that fun stuff. Yeah, we're excited for December. I've decided, because our website's down, so that should be fixed hopefully this week or next coming week. It's close. So, but we normally through our website, that's where we post our up and coming movies. But I'm gonna go ahead and we're just gonna run through really quickly before we do this episode our lineup for December. So December, we're going to really lean heavily into the Christmas season. We haven't been able to do that because the last couple of years, there've been a lot of movies coming out in December, as odd as that was. Some of it because of COVID. The year before that, it was just an interesting December. But this year, not so much.
The slim pickings are slim.
So we're leaning into the Christmas this week. Here in a little bit, we're going to start talking about White Christmas, the 1954 classic. And then next week, we're going to do Violent Night.
I'm excited for that one.
Too, with David Harbour. The week after that will be...
Is that Avatar? Or
that's when Avatar comes out, but that's not when we're releasing. So next week we're releasing, or the week after that, the third week in December, we'll release It's a Wonderful Life.
Also
and then
a good one.
Also a really good one. And then the final week, so this 26th, will be when Avatar comes out. And then by then, hopefully we'll have, the website will definitely be back out by then. And so we'll have January's. But
ready to go. Sweet.
Shout out to our patron. What is he now? The Klooge Splooge.
Soundless Klooge
That's
Splooge.
Right. Soundless Klooge Splooge. Shout out to him. He voted. We put up 4 Christmas movies for him to vote on. And these
are all his fault.
Yeah. So the old timey movies, we picked some Christmas classics, and they weren't all old timey, but that's what he went with was White Christmas and It's a Wonderful Life. And so kudos to him. We appreciate it. I'm perfectly happy with those movies because they're 2 of my favorites for Christmas. So I watch them every year anyway. So they were on the list. So it was fun to get started early this year. So with that, that's what's coming up through the month of December. But yeah, let's jump into White Christmas. So White Christmas was released November 18th, 1955. Actually, it was like my dad was like 6 months old, dude.
My parents hadn't been born yet.
Yeah. My dad was, in fact, I guess he'd be almost a year old. He was born in January, so he was like 10 months old. It was written by Norman Krasna and Norman Panama, a couple of Normans. And then it was directed by Michael Curtiz. It stars Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Rosemary Clooney, Vera Ellen, Dean Jagger, Mary Wicks, and Anne Whitfield. It is about a successful song and dance team that become romantically involved with a sister act and team up to save the failing Vermont inn of their former commanding general. And Alec, you got to give your little synopsis that you gave before we started recording, because I started laughing at that. The Christmas movie that has
this is the Christmas movie that has nothing to do with Christmas. The title is White Christmas, and up until like the last 5 minutes, it's really nothing to do with the Christmas season.
Not really. I guess the first like 3 minutes.
The first 5 minutes.
And then the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Are
Which is so interesting, but it's a Christmas movie, and it's been established as a Christmas movie. As one of the best Christmas movies, and there's not a lot that actually deals with Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful.
And one cool thing about this movie is like with Bing Crosby's rendition of White Christmas at the beginning, especially, it changed the song, because the song historically before that was much more upbeat. a faster tempo, and then that rendition he does on the battlefield and during World War II, with the soldiers there, and there is just really slowed down, very, I don't want to say melancholy, but melancholy. And it really, that's now the version that everybody does, right? Like you don't hear that song unless it's that slowed down, quiet, really kind of haunting almost version. You might hear some with some sleigh bells or some weird things in the background to give it some pep and happiness, but it was really, he changed the song completely, which thank goodness, because it's the
Much
Bing
better his
Crosby
way.
version. Oh yeah, that Bing
Much
Crosby
better.
version, that's the only one I listen to. Like,
Yeah. And then
it's
he went and
amazing.
solidified himself as like the all-time Christmas singer
Oh yeah,
with all the records and whatnot that he put out just around Christmas music.
yeah. Can I say Bing
Good.
Crosby, like, does not look like his voice. Like, he starts singing, I'm like, wait, what?
Something here doesn't match.
That doesn't feel right.
Yeah, this is wrong on so many levels.
But yeah, and this is like my grandma, like, never went a Christmas without the Bing Crosby albums. Like,
Oh,
she had no
absolutely.
record player, so she would throw on the actual vinyl record, which sounds better than anything else we have by far. So she would play that, and it was, yeah, and that's what I grew up on, was Bing Crosby singing Christmas tunes, man. So this one, that's why I love this movie. It always just brings back a lot of, hey, I know that song's great.
Oh yes, wonderful way to open up the movie. Especially at the time this was filmed, right? 1954, 1955 release. You've got Korea War that just ended. You have Vietnam War kind of just getting kicked off. So everybody who's used in this film, they're war vets.
Yeah.
For the most part, in one shape or another.
Well, and a lot of actors of this generation, like the Bing Crosbys, they were veterans. Like, they went to war and came back and got into acting and did whatever, especially in that age group. They may not have gone to World War II specifically, but a lot of them went to World War I. So it was definitely a different time in Hollywood, and a different.
Yeah, because let's not forget, you had the McCarthy cat running around. Everybody was a communist.
What a whack job that guy was.
So this was a weird time in Hollywood.
Yeah. Very weird.
But what a way to kick off the movie. And it really kicks off a little bit of the humor aspect. And I love old movies. I think it's been well established. And I love them because you actually have to watch them. And you have to pay attention. There's no like laugh track, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe does this where they lead you where they want you to go to laugh. Older Hollywood doesn't do that. You have to pay attention. You have to catch the joke.
Yeah.
And you get a right banner when Dean Jagger, who plays General Waverly, sends his replacement off on a wild goose chase.
Oh, shit.
Oh, yeah, there's no Christmas in the Army, Captain. Remember that. Sorry, you take the shortcut, and sends him off on just the scenic route.
Love
then
it.
even in the aftermath, he's like, that sergeant's going to be a private morning. Yeah, he's lucky, isn't he?
Yeah. What a lucky bastard.
Exactly. And that just sets the tone where you have this, it's a musical, and there's the singing and the dancing that you come to expect from a movie like this, but it's also super funny. And you have to pay attention to notice everything that happens. Like my favorite scene, right, is when it's after Phil Davis, Danny Kaye, saves Bing Crosby's character, right? And then he's in the hospital wing, or the infirmary, and Bing Crosby comes to visit him, and he totally ropes him into taking him on, just absolutely salesman of the century. And he's got his arm in a sling, but he shakes his hand with the arm that's supposed to be broken, shakes it, and then puts it back in the sling. And as Bing Crosby's walking out, he kind of looks, because he kind of noticed, but it's just so smooth. And it's not played for laughs, that you have to pay attention. You can miss it. You can go, several watch-throughs without seeing this. And then when you notice, you're like, no way he did that. But it's just so smooth and great comedy. I love it.
Well, and he immediately follows it up. So he takes it out, shakes his hand, puts it back, and then Bing Crosby's character like pats him on that arm, and he doesn't react until after the fact, and then he goes, "Oh, watch out, Captain." Like to just instigate the fact that, dude, you just patted my busted up arm
Yeah.
that I got from saving your life. Oh,
And
so
this is why
funny.
Danny Kaye is one of my favorite actors.
Oh, for sure.
And he's also, in my opinion, listeners, this is my opinion, he's the most underrated actor that has ever been in Hollywood. Because he was very, very good at everything, but he didn't specialize. And especially in this kind of era of Hollywood, you have you're leaving kind of the golden age where everybody had to ride a horse, everybody had to know how to fence, everybody had to know how to do everything. You're getting into almost these specialized kind of roles where, you know, this movie is a great example. You have Bing Crosby, who matches up with Rosemary Clooney. Both of them are singers, very, very good singers. Neither one of them can dance worth a damn. And then you have Vera Ellen, who cannot sing. And most of her singing in this is actually dubbed. She can't sing.
Oh, is it?
Yes, it's dubbed. It's
I
not
didn't
her
know
singing
that.
it. She can dance, though. She can dance, and that's what she's made for. And then you have Danny Kaye, who was thrown into this because none of the other dancers who were supposed to pair up with Vera Ellen were able to do the film. So they used Danny Kaye because he was good enough to make it believable where they really needed him to be.
Yeah.
But he's not, you can see that, you know, she's carrying their dance number. I think it's like the best things happen when you can dance.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's having to hold back her own talent because he's not good enough.
That's funny.
But he's good enough to make it believable. And that's kind of what his career was he's the, okay, we need someone for this. Who can we teach? Danny Kaye.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I never really paid much attention to Danny Kaye. The only thing I knew him from was when he was an old man and he was in the Twilight Zone TV series in the 80s. That's the only thing. And he was only in one episode. Outside of that, I don't think I guess in Laugh-In. I probably watched him in Laugh-In once.
Yeah, he was mostly a side character support role.
Yeah.
The only one I know for sure that he was leading was The Court Jester. And that's my favorite movie of all time. Not a very good movie, but it's my favorite. And it came out after this one. I believe it was. But yeah, he's like one of my favorite actors. And I would compare him, for listeners who haven't ever seen him act anything, he's a better version of Ryan Reynolds than Ryan Reynolds is.
I like that. That's funny.
He's able to deliver the awkward, funny line so well that it looks like he did it by accident. Because he's got all those weird voice cracks that he slips into his lines and his stuttering that, you know, you'd anticipate someone who's being nervous, but this dude's a professional.
Yeah.
And everything he does is just so funny.
Yeah.
No,
I like him. Well, and he and Bing Crosby play well together. Like their chemistry and interactions, like especially like every time he grabs his arm, like and reminds him, "I saved your life." Like shit's hilarious. Like it just...
And yeah, Bing Crosby gets progressively more upset, like as it goes. Like it's not the same reaction every single time.
Yeah.
It's as it keeps happening, he's like, "Dude, cut it out."
You're really are you really?
Yeah.
Oh god. So funny. Yeah, I just enjoy, I think the main four in this are really cool. And then yeah, I mean, don't even get me started on the general. Like even though he's in the movie for nothing,
20 minutes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just amazing character throughout, like because he's just, well, and I think that's one of the things that as I was watching this again today, because I was watching it kind of in a different light than I normally, so I watch it every year, but I watched it a little different light every time I do watch a movie for the podcast. It's a little different than when I'm just watching for fun. And it was interesting to see like that old sense of honor, you know what I mean? Like, and everybody knows that my faith in the human race is fucking little.
Non-existent.
Yeah, it's very, very
gone.
low. And it's not fair to it's a big wide generalization. It's only the real worst of the dregs of humanity, as I love to say, that are actually who I have no faith in. But the problem is that's who we always hear about, that's who we always see. And I think that's one of the things that I love about my favorite things about these old movies is that's not who they focused on back then. You know what I mean? Like even in like some of the toughest times and things that were going on in the world, and maybe that was part of it, is they had enough shitty things going on around them that they didn't have to like focus on the fact that people are shitty, because it was easier for people, I think, to be less shitty because of everything that they were having to deal with on a global basis. And that's a wide speculation on my end because we were only going, but even in talking to my parents, they were like, even in the 60s and 70s, like during the Vietnam War, it was different. Like people were nicer to each other, and now with the pervasiveness of the internet and the ability to be an internet troll, like we're just dicks to each other. So that's one of the reasons I love these old movies, is watching that, like having this. And while it's not in your face about Christmas, which I also love, there's like that underlying Christmas spirit of, here's this man that was really good to them. They had a lot of respect for him. And the whole thing is, how do we improve his life? Once they realize he owns this place, it's struggling, man, they go on the leaning into, even to the point of hinting that it could break him, which is one of my favorite lines in this. He's like, I don't even remember what he asked him. What's dangerous or whatever? And he's like, somewhere between.
Yeah. What is it? It's like, what's wow? How much is wow?
Yeah,
Somewhere between ouch and boing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that shit. Somewhere between ouch and boing. Fucking, that shit's great. But that's like, they're willing to go to the point of destroying this career that they've built since they've been out of the military in order to simply help this general. So the Christmas spirit, as you might call it, really is pervasive when you start to look at the actual story that's going on. They're just not in your face about it, which I love. But yeah, I think that's why I like a lot of these old time movies, is there's always some level of optimism and honor and care and really the goodness of human nature, which I do believe still exists. We just don't see it very often because it's not what sells news. It's not what sells papers. It's not what keeps
People
the
aren't
internet
interested
alive.
in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We want the worst of the worst.
Yeah, they'd much rather hear about what Florida man did.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I loved like John Krasinski when he did Some Good News. Like, I don't know if you ever watched that shit during the pandemic. Like, I quit watching everything except for Some Good News because I love that shit. I think we don't do enough of that. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Period. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it shows it's another kind of, I guess, lesson in leadership, right? You have this old school general, and again, you have Bing Crosby, who's like, okay, I know it's murder to ask you to leave your families if you're from the 151st Division, and the turnout is great because this general took care of them during probably the worst part of their life. Being in World War II and near enough to the action to, have their Christmas bombed out, to where they, really respected him enough to make the trip and travel and, to give him the best Christmas present they could.
Yeah.
So it's really it's a movie. This is one of two movies where I bawl like a baby.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, the other one also directed by Michael Curtiz.
Oh, that's funny. Which movie's that?
Casablanca.
Oh yeah, that'll get you. Yeah, no, for me too. Like I get emotional in this movie, especially at the end, like when the first walks in and you can just see that the actor and that general is like, he's just holding all the emotion back like that. It chokes me up a bit, and then immediately follow up with the Army song. Like, it really is. It's just a really wholesome, fun, entertaining, good-hearted movie, and we just don't have enough of that. So that's one of the things I love about Christmas is I hate shitty Christmas movies. Like, and I have to watch a lot of them because
all the Hallmark ones.
Motherfucker.
I can tell you exactly what happens.
Dude. Well, because Casey's really into Christmas because her mom's like a Christmas freak, and it's cool. Like, I love going to her mom and dad's house during Christmas because her mom goes all out. Like,
nice.
The house is insane, and it's beautifully decorated, like outrageously cool. But I can't handle the shitty movies because they're not good. They're just garbage. They're like, well, it's Christmas. People will watch them because it's Christmas. And I'm like,
and if we mention enough about Christmas in it, then it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah. Well, and all they're doing is taking movies that already existed outside of Christmas and writing them with a Christmas plot.
Yeah.
It's fucking it. And it drives me crazy.
Really original.
Fuck. Like, yeah, there was one, and this is neither here nor there, but Casey was watching one the other day, and it's a couple days ago. And I don't even remember what the fuck it was called, but it was basically Overboard with Christmas. And instead of falling off a boat and getting stuck in the ocean, this dumb bitch falls off a mountain on the skis and hits her head on a tree.
Lindsay Lohan, right?
Yeah, that's her. That was her.
Fuck,
it's terrible.
I think falling is actually in the name.
Yeah, something like that. It was so stupid.
Like falling far or something weird.
Yeah. But I was watching it going, it's fucking Overboard. Like, that's all this is.
It's the same story.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So that's why the other reason I love the old movies, because they were original. Like, this wasn't about just cashing in on Christmas. This was about telling a story that just happened to take place during the holidays, and that, they were able to utilize the holiday spirit and Christmas in order to make the movie even more intriguing and more moving and emotional. So that's what I look for in Christmas movies, is some originality that still leans into the holiday piece, but not it's just a Christmas movie because we take a movie and write it and do it during Christmas time. Like, that drives me nuts. So,
well, Christmas almost isn't even a focal point in a lot of these.
Yeah.
It's more of a plot device than it is being an actual, build it around. Whereas versus something like, I'll pick on this movie, even though I really enjoy it, The Grinch, right? The story of The Grinch.
Sure.
Christmas is the focal point.
Mm-hmm.
And all your plot devices revolve around that. Whereas it's Christmas, or the Christmas time, the holidays are used as a way to help drive their story, or move it along. It's the reason for them to go to Vermont so they can meet the general at his new job as being a landlord.
Yeah. I love that shit. Oh, God.
And, where you can learn to play horseshoes and how to be old and relax in his retirement. But it's not the focal point of the movie.
Yeah.
As being Christmas, or, because there's snow on the ground. Even though that's not a plot device in this movie at all. There's no snow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy this movie. And I even enjoy, like, all of the little mistakes, I guess would probably be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Where you can see a really hard cut of where they snip the footage and then start it again from a different camera angle.
Yep.
And that's another kind of, I guess, romantic thing or romanticism I have with older movies, is they didn't fucking care.
Yeah.
Like, it was, nobody was sitting going tooth and nail over everything for continuity purposes. They wouldn't have to reshoot an entire scene because something was messed up, or someone puts the coffee pot back on the coffee holder twice. When you snip that just happens. That was just part of filming. They brushed over it and they continued to tell their story, and their story was good enough that you didn't have people who would sit there and analyze all the bad things that, or all the little goofs and continuity issues that you have. Yep. Versus now, you have people who go to the theater, like, on their first time, they're like, I got a list. There's 37 things that you fucked up on.
Fucking internet trolls.
Yeah, assholes.
And don't get me wrong, like, I laugh my ass off at things like Starbucks cups on a fucking
On Game of
table in
Thrones
Game of
movies.
Thrones, but like, it's not that fucking important that I worry about it. Like, it's just like, yeah, I mean, there's a moment when I laughed out loud in this movie, and I do every time I watch it, because there's a scene where one of the girls, and I don't remember who it is, but one of the girls is holding a coffee cup. She sets it down, and then it hard cuts to her holding it again and
That's
taking a
Vera
sip.
Ellen.
And I'm like, wait, what?
She keeps moving it.
Yeah,
But you
like,
can tell it's like that's where we cut the scene, move the camera, start again.
like, it's magic. She just has the cup in her hand again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I laugh, but it's not that serious. Like, and I think that's another way. Like, why does that fucking matter? Who cares?
It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with the story.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit more forgiving with older movies
Sure.
on stuff like that, because they're telling, for me anyway, they're telling a more immersive story that I can get behind. I don't focus on all the little things that I notice them like, yeah, but it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, well,
because they have lines like Freckle Face Haynes, the dog face boy.
And then like he's sitting there staring at the picture going, he always was a good looking kid. After the big long pause, like, and you see the freaking, his partner's just like, yeesh.
Yeah.
You're so full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
To your point though, Alec, I think it has to do with writing too, and like kind of what we rely on in movies. Like back then, movies relied on the story and the writing and the dialogue, and the visuals didn't matter, because the only visual that mattered was we're in Vermont in December and there's no snow. Like, that's what mattered. You know what I mean? It's not that nowadays, and one of the issues with modern movies is, unfortunately, a lot of times the writing has gotten stale. And that's not anyone's fault, other than, for the most part, I mean,
I blame
what
the
is it now?
studios.
Damn near 100 years we've been making films and writing stories and books. It's hard to find an original story anymore. I mean, even original stories are technically kind of rewrites or
Based
adaptations of something else, right? Like, you can always, like, I can almost take every science fiction movie and go, that's just fucking Star Wars. Or you can take Star Wars and go, oh, it's just a fucking Fukuyama movie. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and then you take Fukuyama and go, it's just a fucking cowboy story. So, I mean, it's just, there's these stories have been told, but we rely so much on the visuals being the part that we go for in movies now. And I get that, because we have the technology, we have that, but that's why even on this podcast, we shit on bad CGI. We shit on things like that, because that's the focal point. That's what makes movies unique and exciting and different. Instead of, in this case, and in these older movies, it was how good of a story, how good is the dialogue, versus visually it needs to be appealing. And so I think that makes a huge difference to what you're talking about, where a film like this, I can forgive it because it's such a good story and it's so written so well, like the jokes and the serious lines and and even like the romance shit when they're fighting is even more realistic to me than most like romantic comedies now. Like, romantic comedies are funny and I enjoy a good rom-com, but they're not realistic for the most part. Whereas with this one, like when they get in the fight like this, like nobody's outright shitty. Nobody's outright stupid either. They're not ignorant and dumb about it. They just kind of are passive aggressive, but respectful. Like, she doesn't want to be a complete dick to this dude. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? But he's not like, look, bitch, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what the shit we would see today, because that's how we treat each other. But it's a different, but the writing is so intriguing to me, because in this movie, when they're having this fight between the two of them, because this old biddy freaking gives her some shitty information, she just goes into like, this is bullshit. There's always an angle, right? And so now it's this awkward, and I'm like, I've been there. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, it's just miscommunication that
yeah,
got blown out of proportion.
yeah,
And everybody thinks that everybody else is in the loop, and not everybody has all the facts.
yeah,
And it's one of those things where it's a delicate situation where, the housekeeper thinks that they're going to put the general on display and kind of parade him out. That's not what's going to happen, but that's what she hears.
mm-hmm.
And so it's just, it's a perfectly logical kind of sequence of events that would happen if you were eavesdropping on the phone.
Yeah.
Housekeepers anonymous.
Oh shit! Well, it just leads to so many good lines because, like, one of the lines that he says or that she says later is like, "It took like 15,000 for me to do what I do with just me or whatever it
It
was."
took
Like,
15,000 men to take my place.
yeah, that's the one.
15,000 men. I don't know.
Shit's great.
Because he's like, I got along perfectly fine in the army without you.
So funny. Oh man, but that's I mean the freaking the writing is and like you said,
Phenomenal.
the jokes, it's unbelievably funny.
But it's also, you have this great kind of all-star cast in a way. Like, not a whole lot of them had super glamorous movie careers necessarily.
Yeah.
But they are extremely talented performers. And so you kind of gathered them all together and they're able to improvise, right? On an entirely, scale that really hasn't been seen. You have the sandwich scene where Bing Crosby tells Rosemary Clooney what she's going to dream about. Completely made up. It was just rambling.
Yeah.
And he's able to throw in kind of his different voices that he used, because that's what you use Bing Crosby for. Use him for his voice. Or the best scene in the entire movie where they dress up as the Haynes sisters. God. Not even anywhere in the script, but Danny Kaye did it backstage as a joke. And the director, Michael
put it in, huh?
saw it and was cracking up and put it in. So they, in addition to like all this incredible writing that they have, they also leave themselves room to improvise and to change their story if something comes out and like, oh, that would be really cool. Let's add that in. Yeah. So the whole landlord, the sheriff, and all this kind of underlying plot line, they threw that in there to give Phil Davis and Bob Wallace a chance to dress up as the Haynes sisters.
So funny. Oh, and I love that part too, because you hear that like really loud cackling laugh. You know that was a fucking camera guy that couldn't keep his shit together. Like,
oh yeah, nobody could. Like, you see Bing Crosby laughing through the entire scene. Like, he could not keep it together. I mean, it's like, I would attribute this is, Danny Kaye, in my opinion, is Ryan Reynolds. Sure. But he also has a little bit of Will Ferrell in him, where he would try and break every single member of the cast that he was working with just for kicks and giggles. Like, Will Ferrell does that to everybody.
Oh, for sure.
And because it's funny. It's especially if you're working with a kind of a funny group of people. So Danny Kaye was doing that, 40 years before we even saw Will Ferrell and everything. Yeah. But it's just amazing because they have this great story that they're telling, but they're not sold on it completely to the point where they're gonna, kind of toss away good content to stick to their story. They're willing to move it around a little bit and adjust and make those kind of calls on the fly. To tell a great story and enhance that story. Yeah. Which you wouldn't see today because the studios or producers would, ixnay that because their kid or whatever is involved in the writing and nepotism.
Yeah. They only let that shit happen in like comedy movies and it only ends up in the reels. You know what I mean? Or there's some movies, I guess it depends on the actor, but most of the time it's like serious, like dramas and shit. Like Denzel, they let him,
or Robert De Niro, they'll let him go in the gangster movie.
Yeah, they let us some of them go, but it's rare that the comedy, unless it's one of these comedies that like gets made that way. Like Step Brothers barely had any kind of freaking dialogue at all written. They just said, okay, we have John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell. Let's see how this goes. You know what I mean?
Put him in a room. Yeah. Or Robin Williams when he was around.
Dude.
Just point the camera at him and let him go.
Fucking genius,
He'll
man.
he'll give us something.
Yeah. Guy's a genius. Yeah, I just keep thinking about all the lines. Like,
there's a ton of one-liners in this movie,
and
they're so subtly delivered.
Sisters, and like, what's his name? It says, "How can a guy that ugly have the nerve to have sisters?" And freaking Bing Crosby's just like on top of it. Very brave parents, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, a great fucking line. Like, wow.
Well, then they followed up later where it was like, we were just talking about how, what's his name? Benny Haynes could have sisters with eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's blue eyes or brown eyes or whatever it was.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, there's just so many one-liners that are delivered so subtly. Like another one of my favorites is when they've met the general in his landlord role. And Danny Kaye's like, well, we wouldn't be any good as generals. And just immediate clapback is, you weren't any good as privates.
It's so funny. And I love the one too where he's like, they're fake engaged, and like the general forces him to kiss, and he's like, in general, you're better than my Cocker Spaniel. Like, you're way superior to my Cocker Spaniel. Like, it was such a great callback. And that's another thing that these movies and good scripts do, is they callbacks to previous shit. Like, they have that freaking blonde at the very beginning that he's trying to set Bing Crosby up with.
Mutual, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's dumb as a box of rocks and just annoying as shit. And then she shows up later at the party, and they hand her off to the dumbass that keeps trying to cut in. It's just like, it's such a great, because why is she there all of a sudden? I mean, I get she was part of the cast, but it was just kind of,
it was just a random callback that gets a giggle.
Yeah, the cast has been there for like 2 or 3 scenes, like long scenes and performances, and then all of a sudden she's there just as this guy's annoying, we're gonna dump him off with you.
Oh, absolutely. Like, he's getting in the way of our plan.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Spell Smith. That shit was
she
great.
didn't go to Smith.
Yeah.
Go to Smith. She couldn't even spell it. Oh, that's so funny.
Oh God.
I will say though, a scene of this movie that I never have enjoyed.
Yeah.
And only recently I figured out why it was even put in, was the choreography number. You remember that? Where it's you got Danny Kaye.
Yeah, it's a weird scene.
Yeah, so I figured out why they put it in there. It's because he can't dance, or he can't dance at the level that Vera Ellen was. So she gets this new dance partner so she can actually showcase her talent.
Sure.
A guy who can keep up. And they notice that nowhere in like the rehearsal is Danny Kaye. He's nowhere in the show rehearsing anything. So they threw this in kind of last minute to show him being a part of the show.
Gotcha.
Because originally he's supposed to pair up. And I think even like Fred Astaire was attached to this at first. And then he couldn't do it. They tried to get Donald O'Connor, who's a phenomenal dancer. Yeah. He got sick, so they threw in Danny Kaye. Cannot dance as good as those first two blokes.
Yeah.
And so there was no way to fit him into the show. So after I figured that out, I kind of got a little bit nicer with that, but I still hate it. Like, it's my least favorite part because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that's the one issue that I have. And this is not with just this movie. This is with older movies in general sometimes. But this movie's probably worse than most. And that there's random dance numbers. And that's the worst of the worst by far. Because you're like, fucking weird.
What?
But because it has nothing to do with the story other than a rehearsal for the show. But like, there's a lot of, it's a 2-hour movie, which in the 50s is a very long movie. Of course, I say that, and we're reviewing It's a Wonderful Life in 2 weeks, and that's even longer. But I mean, it's a long movie for a 1955 release, and there's probably 15 minutes
easily
unnecessary dance numbers. and sing like a couple of songs, and I'm like, this adds no value to this movie other than back then those were considered. I mean, it was entertaining. Like people looked at that one, look at the skill, look at the, the dance numbers are fun and entertaining. But from especially nowadays perspective, like I watch that and I'm like, okay. In fact, I skip that scene you're talking about. And luckily on Netflix now I can just scroll down and go, oh, there it is, the end. And because I find no value in that. It doesn't add anything other than, like you say, the performers are badass. And Vera Allen, right? What's her last name? Ellen. God, yeah, Vera Ellen can dance her ass off. And the guy that plays John, that's her partner in that scene, can dance his ass off too. But it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything for the story for me.
Yeah, it's just to showcase her specific talent. And maybe it would have been better if they had the original Fred Astaire or Donald O'Connor,
sure,
because then you can tell a little bit of story with your dancing, whereas now it's entirely just to showcase her skill.
Yeah, and it's out of place, and it feels out of place. And there's another one, and I don't remember which scene it is, to be honest with you, but because I skip it, because it's another dancing scene or singing.
It's the one where she's in yellow, right? And they're doing Abraham. Yeah. Abraham, I think, is the name of the.
Yeah, and I'm like, no, because it just doesn't add anything to me. So I think this could be an 1.5 hour long movie with the core of what's needed to tell the story and to keep the characters moving forward, and still would have been just as good to me.
Easily.
So,
leave a lot of this on the cutting room floor, and streamline it, make it still the same movie.
Yeah,
because it does have all this extra fluff
in
there that's not really necessary or vital in any way, other than to showcase, the talent of your staff. And it was probably somewhere written in her contract or something like that.
Sure.
That she had to have a X amount of dance numbers, and they did the best they could with what they had. Danny Kaye can fake that he can dance. He cannot dance at the level that she's able to dance at. So, yeah, I mean, I could trim 30 minutes off this movie and be completely fine.
Sure. Yeah, and I do artificially. But every year I'm like, nope.
Skip.
Don't need you. But overall, yeah, I mean, very enjoyable.
No, I love this movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It was a good pick.
It was. Thank you, Klooch Splooch.
Yeah.
Charles.
Let's rate this thing. Let's go first, my friend.
All right. This is my favorite Christmas movie of all time. I watch it multiple times every year just because I enjoy the music, the dancing, anything that I can't do, that I see someone else do, I really enjoy because it just kind of fascinates me. There are talked about it, the things that you could cut in this movie. And all the little kind of goofs and continuity things that normally I would rip into a movie a little bit for, but the nostalgia of old movies is strong with me. So I'm going to give this movie a 4. There's no doubt in my mind I will watch it again. I will watch it again this season. I'll watch it again this month, multiple times before I go through it. It's not a perfect movie in my opinion, but it is one of the best movies I think that is out there currently or has been made, which is funny because the director, Michael Curtiz, he's made a lot of great movies. Dude's an asshole. Like straight up. He's one of the worst people. Like he would not have survived Hollywood today with the social kind of issues and stuff that we've, I guess, moved into or evolved into. He would not last. Where it's more about kind of social awareness and what's going on outside of your sphere of influence. Dude was an asshole in the 30s.
Wow.
So he would not be good. So I'm glad he was around when he was, so he could make movies like this, because they would not have been made today under the same circumstances. But 100% one of my favorite movies of all time. My favorite Christmas movie. 4 out of 5 from me.
Nice. I'm going to lead with my score and say that's what I'm going to give it to, as a 4. It was always a 4 for me, and that's same reasons. There's things that can be cut out. I don't care. Like, I really don't care about like the flubs and shit. I only notice them because they're funny.
Yeah.
But they don't, it just like the cutting out the pieces that I skip don't add anything or take away. Like, they don't add anything to the film. the little flubs don't take anything away from the film. Like, it doesn't impact the overall story or how I look if it reaches film. And I'm with you. I think it's one of the best Christmas movies, and it's ironic because it has very little to do with Christmas. And I think that's what modern Christmas movies do wrong, is it's all about Christmas. I mean, even in 2 weeks when we review It's a Wonderful Life, it's very little about Christmas. In fact,
there's a whole other story about Christmas. The only thing about Christmas, it takes place during December.
And only parts of it. Like, it's not even like, so I mean, there's so much and I think that's why, to me, and I'll be honest, I met Casey 20 years ago, and until I met Casey, I was never a big old time movie. Like, I enjoyed old music. Like, I knew Bing Crosby before I ever saw him in a movie because my grandma used to listen. And I'm sure that she put on this movie sometime when I was a kid in black and white, and I watched it and didn't care for it. But as an adult, Casey introduced me to more of the old school 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s movies and I started to appreciate them for movies like this, where it can be a Christmas movie. In fact, it can be one of the best Christmas movies, or in your case, the best Christmas movie, without it being in my face Christmas. It just takes place during Christmas, and it carries some underlying themes that can apply to the Christmas spirit. And you can talk about, hey, this is a great Christmas movie because of what it's about and the fact that it takes place during the holiday season, not because, well, we're going to make a Christmas movie and fucking bleed Christmas shit all over you through your screen, but the movie's going to blow ass, but it's a movie it's a Christmas movie. Fuck you. So that's why, like, I get into movies like this and during this time of year, and I'll watch this again along with, because like I said, Casey and I would go through as many Christmas movies as possible, and the only ones I actually watch with her are these ones and things like last year's movies. Like I love Love Actually, but again, not necessarily about Christmas. It's just takes place during the holidays, so it's very reminiscent. But then, like, Home for the Holidays, even some 80s movies, Christmas movies, are pretty good. But I think this is up there, and I think it, like I said, for me, it changed Christmas music even to a degree because of Bing Crosby, and probably through this movie he became the voice of Christmas because everybody was just so blown away by the way he performed White Christmas at the beginning of the movie. So love this movie, great movie. I'll watch it again. 4 out of 5 for me as well. Go watch this movie if you haven't before. It's worth it. Netflix, it's even in color, so Matson could watch it.
I had to find some other reason to.
Yeah, I know. I had to get my dig in there. So, yeah, there it is. And with that, go ahead and tell everybody where they can find us, Alec.
You hesitated, JJ. Are you nervous?
No, I'm so excited. It's just, yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to our review of White Christmas, and thank you to Soundless Klooge Splooge for selecting it for this wonderful month of December. If you guys would like to participate in the selection of our monthly docket, consider joining us on Patreon at What's Our Verdict. There you can find exclusive content and, more importantly, bloops for supporting us directly. If this is your first time listening to one of our episodes, I'm sorry, but we are not responsible for any future therapy you will need after the life-adjusting experience of listening to our podcast. It is a well-known fact that the cure for What's Our Verdict is more What's Our Verdict. So check us out on every major podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Ghana. If you want to further your nightmares, check us out on YouTube, where you can see our faces and match that with the horrific screeching of our voices. We enjoy any and all interactions, so drop us a comment or a like and let us know if your verdict matches with ours. Back to you, JJ.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alec. With that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagic out.
Whoa!